Diane, Krista McNamara. Nice meeting you also.
Of course, I am so thrilled for an opportunity to celebrate Susan Shultz. She's kind of like the sister that I never had, actually. I love her dearly, even though, sometimes we didn't agree on things, which is kind of crazy. But I have a town proclamation for her, but really I would like to say, just very briefly up front, this is just a fraction of the people whose lives Susan has touched over her years with the Darien Times. And I'm so happy that you're all here. We represent all different aspects of the town, different ideas, different thoughts, and Susan put those into words, into the paper every week. And I don't think I know anybody, maybe a couple folks who work with the Museum of Darien and Ken Reese, who know more about the town and more people in the town and know them deeply as Susan does. So I'm so happy to celebrate her. We're really going to miss your fair voice, your deep caring for the town of Darien. Especially two things that come to mind for me is your love and care of acknowledging Memorial Day and all of our fallen veterans. And the incredible work that you did for our community around 9/11. So I promised myself that I wouldn't cry, so I'm crying now. So it's so fun to be able to provide these. Whereas Susan Shultz, as editor of the Darien Times for the past 10 years, has gone to great lengths to investigate and publish important community news, important to all who live in Darien. Her efforts have had wide-ranging effects that include bolstering local nonprofits, providing exposure for charitable causes, and highlighting so much of what characterizes our beloved town. Although she's a Wilton resident, Susan took up home here in Darien, and she's worked to tell the stories that might not have otherwise been told. Susan has provided vital information in times of emergency, leadership and strength in times of controversy, and has maintained our local paper as the resource for all things Darien. She has brought hard-to-hear topics to light, as well as heartwarming stories that reflect this great community. And Susan has gone above and beyond her role at the Darien Times, and her love for the job has been evident through her 16-year tenure with 10 as editor. To her credit, she's been subjected herself to countless coffees with the Darien Times, where almost anything could happen and oftentimes did. She's shown strength to do what was right, even when it was not the popular choice, and has given voice to differing viewpoints. And whereas the entire town would like to thank you, Susan, for all you've done on behalf of Darien, for putting your heart into your work, in a world where true local reporting is vanishing, your consistent work ethic in pursuit of community news has been invaluable. Now, therefore, I, Jamie Stevenson, First Selectman of the Town of Darien, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby announce and proclaim Friday, May 28, 2021, Susan Shultz Day.
Big fun.
You go local, you go state now.
This is a tough crowd. You've already gone down the road. You guys, all right. So I
I'm Terry Wood, for those of you that I don't know, and I'm state rep for Norwalk and Darien, and have gotten to know Susan as my time as a community advocate before I started serving in Hartford. And I'm so deeply grateful for you, your spirit, your heart, your brain, everything, your integrity. Don't cry, because I'll cry too. You've meant so much to our community. And this is a citation from the General Assembly from the entire delegation representing Darien. And it is Susan Shultz in recognition. Many thanks for covering news in Darien for 16 years, 9 as editor. Your unwavering, clear vision and consistency kept us beautifully informed over the years. From news of celebration and accomplishment to those of grief and loss, you were with us on every road traveled. Clear-eyed and composed, wishing you many best wishes and gratitude to you on a great next life chapter. Thank you for everything you've done. Susan, for those of you who may not know, but I'm sure everyone does, Susan loves to cook.
Oh, yes, we do know.
So,
Yes.
this is a gift to Susan with her initials, editor, Darien Times, and on the back it says, with great appreciation and respect and affection to you from the Friends of Susan Shultz 2021. And it's from Soundview Millworks here in Darien, which is a great local business.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think you could make some great rice balls on for those of you I don't know, my name is David Genovese. I've been working in Darien for about 10 or 11 years. I grew up here. I'm grateful that I never ended up in the police blotter. But no, on a serious note, I really feel privileged to be able to come up here and share a few thoughts on my friend Susan and her work over the last number of years in Darien. Susan and I met about 14 years ago when my company bought the building at 10 Corbin Drive, in which the Darien Times is located. And as many of you know, we've had this plan to knock that building down for a long time. Unfortunately for me, Susan got stuck in the elevator at least once. Maybe twice.
You got stuck numerous times.
And if you're a real estate developer, it's really bad if anyone gets stuck in the elevator. But it's especially bad if the editor of your local paper in the elevator. So I'm just grateful that you said I'm my friend, and you didn't lose it completely when stuck in the elevator on numerous occasions. My team laughs a lot about this. But I think that, interestingly, I was thinking about it this morning, I think that my real bond with Susan was formed when I think it was her idea to publish a compendium of articles that were written in the early days before podcasts. Actually kind of a similar idea to what Liz and you guys are doing. But Susan had the idea of publishing a book. There was a dream of Lou Valpicelli, who was writing for the Darien Times. He was an incredible guy. He had a great career with ABC Sports. And he, in retirement, took on this job, sort of a hobby, writing great articles about local business people in town. And so he wrote about Bobby Mazza and Bill Frade and Spiro the Cobbler and the guy that runs the dump. And it was just an awesome story, a book of stories. And Lou's dream in retirement was to publish his book, or maybe it was your idea. I can't.
No, it was his idea, but I was very happy to support it.
And so Susan came to me and said, we've got to figure out how to do this. And I had just we both had come to love Lou. And we did it. And I have to say, one of my prouder moments was that day when we were at Atria.
I remember.
And he was signing the book.
Oh.
And he was just beaming. And this is a guy who literally produced ABC Sports, like the agony of defeat, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Right. He was a part of all of that. And the stories were amazing. But that is, to me, where our bond was truly created. Cool. We produced about 1,000 books, and they were sold out in weeks through the local stores in Darien. So a number of years later, though, Susan also did something for me and my family that I'll always be grateful for, which was that she hired my daughter, Lily, to write articles on a contract basis for the newspaper. And so my daughter had an interest in writing, and she was developing her own voice, and Susan just poured gasoline on a burning ember, which is part of why my daughter is the amazing woman that she is today. And so I'm just so grateful for that. She's been an amazing chronicler of our lives in Darien, in line with what, God, I have corona brain, so I'm sorry. But in line with what Jamie was saying, you know, her coverage of events around town, these important events and the documentation of them and goings on was important. But maybe more importantly, you know, she held a mirror up to us at so many key moments and made us kind of reflect upon our views and our positions and decisions we made. And I didn't always agree with you either, but we always did it in such a respectful and an amazing way. I think we've all as a community grown through your work, and so for that, I'm super grateful. And my last point really is the most recent thing that happened with me and Susan. We were in the midst of COVID. We were in the early days of the pandemic, and it was a really dark time for all of us. And Susan was, you know, again, to Jamie's point, kind of calling, checking in, asking what was going on with the businesses, how the paper could help communicate what people were doing, who was going to be open, you know, how it would all work. And so we were, you know, it was like Susan every other day, Jamie and I were talking every day, like I was talking to all of our customers. It was an enormously stressful time, and there was just this one point where I guess you could kind of predict, because I started to cry when I talked about my daughter working for Susan at the Times. There was this one moment where she called to just check in, and I don't know what came over me, but I just lost it completely. I had been trying to be so strong and trying to get through it, and I just lost my shit completely. And we had this conversation that screwed my head back on and basically made me kind of refocus on the job that I needed to do to help, you know, the people that I was involved with. And so for that, I am also eternally grateful. So Susan, I don't even know how to thank you enough for all that you've done for this community and for me personally and my family. You're an amazing person, and I can't wait to see what the next chapter brings. We'll be limping a little bit without you. You're like our big toe in a way. But somehow we'll have to all figure this out. And, stripes?
Keep going.
Anyway, we're grateful, and thank you so much for everything.
I look like horrible. Oh, please, we're all crying. All crying. But it's good.
Okay, I'm Philip Van Munching, and Susan, I have always agreed with you. So I grew up in Darien, graduated class of 1981, and have moved back to Darien twice now in the intervening years. Just came back last year. Somewhere in there, somebody said to me, "Did you know that World Wrestling is here?" I said, yes, and it happens every Thursday morning at the Sugar Bowl. And usually Walter Casey is deeply involved. Susie was really good to me after I had, very full of myself, offered to write for free for the Darien Times, having sold pieces to the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, and published a bunch of books, and her predecessor would not even return my calls. And then I got in this goofy contest to be an advice person for a morning show, and Susie called and said, "Can we do a story?" And I said, "I think so." She said, "Would you like to write a column for us?" And so for a few years I was Ann Landers here in Darien, which was a lot of fun. I have bonded with Susie over two important truths, and she and I will defend each other to the death. The Shining is a terrible movie, and the Monkees are the most underrated band of the 20th especially Mike Nesbitt, for anybody who... I have only one story to tell about my time with Susie, and it's a funny story, but it's a serious point. In a place where she could have been ethically elastic, Susie dealt with Darien in the most ethical, firm way. And I illustrate that by saying that years ago when I took a sojourn to live in Florida for a while, a very close personal friend called and said, "My boy has been arrested for doing what young boys do in Darien or any other town. I really don't want my mom to find out. Is there any way you can not have this in the police reports? Can you call your friend Susie?" And I knew the answer, and I said, "Of course I can." So I called Susie, and she said, Buddy, and she is the only woman who's ever called me Buddy. Buddy, you know I can't do that. And I said, I do now. And now I can call him and say that I asked. An hour later, she calls me up and says, well, having nothing to do with you, we just had a huge fight in the newsroom. Considering the ages of some of the other boys involved, we're not running the story. And now you can call him and take credit. Which is exactly what I did. We love you, Susie. Thank you for everything.
Fun fact, I went to high school with David. I write a column like Philip. I have my notes, so like just be patient with me. David, you and I both had different names back then, but I'm glad that we still know who each other are. So I'm Rebecca Martorella. I've been honored to be asked to speak here. And Susan is just the best. She's the best, and we're going to miss her so much. I skipped right ahead. See what I did there? But I've been writing a column for the Darien Times since 2002, way back before Sue, and before I had to do this to read my notes. But I turned my column into a book in 2006, and it must have been a really slow news week here because they actually said, we'll write a feature on that. And this lovely woman, new writer, Susan Shultz, called me up to interview me. It was my very first time being interviewed for pretty much for anything, and maybe anything since also. And I was super nervous, but talking to Susan was like talking to a friend from the beginning. So now, fast forward 15 years later, 3 editors later, and I'm honored to be talking about the same writer and editor who now is my friend. When Susan took over as editor, I also, Philip, had a hard time getting my column back in the paper for the predecessor who had dropped it for some reason. I still don't know why. So I reached out to Susan and I thought I had a new start, but I was really scared that maybe there was a reason that I didn't want to know why, that they dropped me in the first place. But of course I sent an email to her. I said, here I am, I'd like to come back. And she said, hey, I was wondering what happened to you. Come on back. And I came right back on board, and I quickly found in Susan a kindred spirit, a working mom with 2 children, a fellow Gen Xer, a fan of the Brat Pack, and the monkeys, and the Saw Doctors. And I think probably you and I might be the only people in this room that know who they are. But anyway, so we shared a sense of humor, and we joked that we were separated at birth. But you have all the cooking skills and all the horror movies. All you can have those. You can keep those. Okay. Even The Shining. You keep The Shining too. I know you don't want it. The book. Okay. My daughter's in the Stephen King now, so I'll help you guys out. Susan's been my #1 supporter for the past 10 years as I continue to use my platform to encourage us all to be real with each other, to share the mess behind our white picket fences, and to support each other through the craziness of life and parenthood. She tolerated my urgent texts and my last-second submissions and missed deadlines. She told me when my columns resonated most with her, and she reassured me when I thought they felt forced and irrelevant. She understood when the pandemic stole my creative fire and my submissions became somewhat sporadic, and she still published my work whenever they showed up. I have a separate working relationship with Susan through my volunteer work with Darien Scouting, and we brainstormed early on with me about building awareness and sharing our amazing community service stories. She made space for every submission. She created beautiful layouts and gave us a front page more than once. Thank you. But she did that for every community organization out there because Susan ran a community newspaper, and that meant something. Susan also maintains a real respect for the printed word, even as so many others have gone online. She knows the thrill a child feels when they see themselves in print, the fun of framing a news clipping, the joy of sending a story out to loved ones. Because of my affiliation with the Darien Times, people would ask me, how could they get their stories in? Could I put in a good word? And I have some sort of magical in? And I would say, just send your stories to Susan, the editor at DarienTimes.com, because the truth is we all had an in with Susan. To Susan, every resident was important. And I think you probably interviewed most of them, at least everybody in this room. The high achievers and the average Joes, sports stars and quiz bowl winners, artists, store owners, newscasters, and chief executives, toddlers, children's, teens, and adults, even our dogs, pigs, chickens, and sheep, and bees even. Each story was an interest story. Big games and field days, gallery exhibits, and painted rocks in the woods, joy and pain, schools, budgets, P&Z, and please lock your cars. When residents sent in submissions, she made sure every amateur writer and photographer was credited and published them alongside paid bylines. I don't know if you know how much that meant to people, but I had a number of people tell me how excited they were to see their photo in print with their name on it. I think that's what we'll miss in Susan. She is one of us, and she cared about the town she served. She brought the paper to the community, and she brought the community to the paper. Susan started at the Darien Times in a street front office in the center of town with multiple colleagues, but at the end of her term, she was basically running the paper alone from home, covering almost every story herself, while also raising two spectacular girls, and all during a pandemic. Susan fancies herself as Lois Lane, but if you've worked with her, you know she's not just Lois, she's Superwoman.
Hi. So my name is Nancy Coughlin, and I apologize because I do not have witty, fantastic stories, and I don't even have written remarks. So I'm talking from my heart, and I'm here representing Person to Person. So I've only been at Person to Person for the past 2 years, but I have lived in Darien for 20 years. So I know the amazing work that you've done, and I've seen firsthand all of the work that you've done from the outside and also from the inside. From talking with you, from having the benefit of having you interview me, and also from seeing all of your work. I can speak to how special you are to the Darien Times, and also how special the Darien Times is to this community. Person to Person is $5 million plus agency now, and that doesn't even include the millions of dollars of donated food and clothing. We're serving Stamford and Norwalk, Connecticut's 5th and 6th, 7th most biggest cities. So, we are a big organization serving a lot of people. But at our heart, we are Darien. We've been here, we were founded here, we're still here, and we're heart and soul of this organization and this city and this town. So we cannot survive without organizations like the Darien Times and news outlets like that. No nonprofit can, and we owe our success and our ability to do the work we do to your work in the Darien Times, for your coverage of our work, of the food drives, of the schools doing food drives, of Opus, of Balloons for Campers, which is now Blooms for Campers, because balloons, in case anyone didn't know, helium, it's bad.
Sorry, we have some.
Every now and again, you gotta
I know,
do
they're
special,
taboo.
but all of the work that so many volunteers in town do, and how special it is that you're able to support that. It will not be the same without you. Thank you for all of your years of work, and you were right. We will limp along, but it will always, I think, be a hole that we will miss without you. So thank you.
You're here.
I have not prepared remarks, but I've given a lot of thought to what I'd like to say to Susan. Susan was my editor for many years for my column on transportation, but she was also my colleague in journalism. And it is really sad to see what's happened to local journalism, including this town, where we used to have 2 weekly newspapers, and now we have maybe 1. I remember when there were 2 or 3 reporters working at the Darien Times, covering the town extensively. And as one of the earlier speakers mentioned, now we're down to 1 woman working out of her home. TV 79 covers all the town meetings, so I would be on the phone or texting with Susan on a regular basis to alert her to a particularly, what I thought, newsworthy moment, planning and zoning committee meeting, never. or Board of Finance, or even the Board of Selectmen.
That's where she got it
And
from.
I don't think that she would have been able to cover the town remotely as she was doing if it wasn't for TV 79. But I remember Susan not only for her coverage of the town and all the community groups and the interviews she did, but also the editorials that she wrote. And that's not possible anymore because the local voice of the editorial voice of those town newspapers has also gone away. And I will miss her honesty, her candor, her ethics, as others have cited. And mostly I will miss her because she not only saw this as a job, she saw this as a labor of love. And she put into this job her heart and her soul. And we will miss her dearly, myself especially.
Hi everybody, I'm Nobu, a local artist and activist. I wrote my story, but I forgot the paper. So now it's my memory test. I sent my last letter to editor to Susan, and it was published. So probably many of you here have read it and already know the story. But in case you don't subscribe to Darien Times, just I will repeat what I wrote. Susan helped me when I started Artist at the Grove Street Plaza art event from scratch. And many people thought it won't be successful, but she covered my event for 5 years, and 5 years until COVID hit. I couldn't do it last year, and it could have been impossible to make the event as a Darien New Fall tradition without Darien Times and Susan's help. And also, she helped me with Darien Senior Center artist show, and she put my senior student artwork in the paper in color. So, you know, it's really big. It was really big deal for her and for a senior artist. Their show, an article about their show was in the paper. They had never thought about it. And the color. So I really thank Susan's kindness and love to our community, to everyone. And also, she encouraged me to paint something I can cheer up this community last spring. And I thought that was a wonderful idea. And immediately I got that idea and painted. And she put the painting. The title was Hope. And it was on the front page. Then we went even further, and I had online art auction with Colvin Care and Darien Foundation, and I raised it more than $11,000 and donated it to Colvin Care. And I had never thought of raising money from my dumb painting and donate that kind of huge money. For you, $11,000 it's just a small money, right? And everybody donates. But that was big money for me. So I'm still telling my Japanese friend. And so she helped me a lot with my project. But this week, I realized she has done more to me. I really didn't realize that until this Wednesday. I was watching a webinar by Grace Farm Foundation in New Canaan, and they had a webinar about Asian hate. And Connecticut Attorney General William Tong said, Asians are struggling with stereotype that is weak and quiet and invisible. But thanks to Susan, everybody knows I'm so visible. And everybody knows I'm not quiet, actually too loud. And also, I don't think I'm weak. And also, a professor at Yale, she's an Asian woman, said, Asians don't want to talk about racism. But thanks to Susan, everybody knows I like to talk about racism. So, thank you, Susan. You broke Asian stereotype for me. So I have never struggled with this stereotype. And I'm in this community, belong to this community, and work with everybody. So it was impossible without your help. Thank you so much.
Huge. Woo! Love it. Good job, guys. That's awesome. You have to paint a portrait of Susan now. You got to paint a giant portrait to
So you're gonna have to pretend that I'm like 6'5". I'm Captain Jerry Marin of the police department. All right, he says, good evening. First and foremost, I apologize that I can't be in attendance tonight, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to thank someone who has been so important to the Darien community over the past 16 years. For over half of my career, I've had the pleasure of working with Susan Shultz. When she first started, my interaction with her was pretty limited, as I was working the midnight shift and basically only communicated through emails and phone calls. It wasn't until a couple of years in that I first met her in person. While working the overnight shift one night, I got a call from her around 1 a.m. and she explained that she was on a ghost hunt in the cemetery across the street from the police department. Now, at that stage of my career, I had been on some very strange calls, but I had yet to come across a ghost, nor anyone hunting them. I didn't dare tell my supervisor or anyone else I was working with there I was going where I was going out of fear they would have post 53 take me to the hospital for psychiatric evaluation. So I grabbed my holy water and walked over to the cemetery. Sure enough, Susan was there doing a story on a group that specializes in paranormal activity. I don't remember how successful they all were that night, as my visit was extremely brief. But I finally met Susan and knew from that point that dealing with her would certainly be amusing. As one of the Darien Police Department's public information officers, I have worked with numerous individuals on various media platforms over the years. But no one even comes close to caring as much about Darien as Susan does. Whether it was the police blotter, coverage of traditional town events, stories of tragedy, political news, and many others, Susan always wanted it to be accurate, timely, and properly presented to the citizens of Darien. Knowing the town as well as she does, she has a keen ability at understanding what issues were going to be impactful to the community, sometimes before they even fully presented themselves. I have to admit that maybe once or twice I received a call from her on topics I literally had no knowledge of, which meant it was time to quickly do my homework. That being said, Susan definitely made my job easier. Anytime the police department has needed to get an important message out to the public, she was more than willing to assist and ready to help, often putting other priorities aside in order to assist. I've had dozens of phone conversations when I've heard Lucy and Annabelle running around in the background, asking their mom frivolous questions while I'm giving her details on an active police incident. Susan was always accessible, recognized the importance of her role for the town, and has been a fantastic liaison between the Darien community and the police department. I'd like to thank her for her dedication to the town, the assistance and support she's provided to the police department, her friendship, and I wish her the very best in the next chapter of her career. I'm sure you'll all agree that we will miss her spin on Darien. Please stay in touch.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Adams, and, well, what do we say? Best friend doesn't describe it, but that's what she is. She's my best friend. Probably more than that, but she's the best person I know. Fate brought me here today because I wasn't supposed to be here today, everyone. I'm a broadcaster, have been for many years. She's my biggest fan. She doesn't care in the least bit about sports. She really doesn't. And yet, when we were first colleagues, she said, "Oh, I'll listen." And she went, "Wow, now I care about baseball a little bit. Now I care about basketball a little bit. I don't really like football, but okay, I'm in." I was supposed to be at a minor league baseball game tonight. I'm the broadcaster for the Hudson Valley Renegades in the Yankees chain. And you talk about one of the best days of my life, the day I got that job. Because it took a long time to get there, and the first person I wanted to celebrate it was her. So we had to meet, and of course you have to have a drink.
That's me.
But she couldn't have been happier. Fate, with this, brought me here today to join all of you. And I can tell you, she is horrified standing here today with all this kindness. She hates this. But she's grateful for all these words, and I knew in her heart she wanted me standing right behind her today. Because, best friends. I know the good and the bad in this room. I've heard all of it. I know the stories. I know how great Terry has been. I know how great Jamie has been. I've heard about Rebecca. I've heard about so many of you. Again, the good, and yeah, I know the bad. But I know what this town means to her. I really do. I know she lives in Wilton, and that's where her beloved Lucy and Annabelle are. But man, she's all about Darien. She loves this town. She was heartbroken to make this decision, a decision that I think Jim pointed out so eloquently earlier about the realities of media in 2021, which really, I know we're on TV 79, but they suck. So I don't want to disrespect Jim and TV 79. But she just loved what she did for all of you. She would cry with me over the stories. She would laugh with me over the stories. She would glow over the stories. And she was your biggest supporter, every single one of you. Because I would hear about all of it. Terry did this, Jamie did this, John Cini did this, somebody did something. John Cini cursed somebody out. Cool, John did that, great. But she supported all of you. And yet, this constant integrity and fairness about this person. We challenged each other as electronic and print journalists, but always that integrity that we protected so fiercely, that she always made sure right, left didn't matter. Susan would be in the middle at all times, and it really meant so much. Deep down, she's going to walk away from tonight and go, that was really good. It really was. It was painful, but it was really good. I know, and she has said, now, she may change her mind, she has said to me firmly she will not speak.
No, I will not.
It's So I'm kind of her voice.
What would she say?
She would say, you know what, John? I've got it. She would say, I love you, Darien. She would say, I love you, Darien. And she would say, thank you for 16 amazing years. Thanks for your love back. And thanks for being there for me. Thank you, everybody.
I didn't plan at all, but I feel like I need to say something to you. There's a couple points I want to talk about, I guess, because I didn't really get the chance to organize this, but, well, I met you probably my sophomore year. Yeah, it was around November through the phone when Janice, you were interviewing me actually for a story. And that time in my life, I feel like there was a little bit of a domino effect of a bunch of things that were going on that brought me to writing. And I never expected that that's where I would have found such a strong passion. But I realized I loved writing, and I tried to push myself into so many places, and you were the one that took my bait. And I was silent also during that time. I was very quiet my first couple of years in high school. And I think I found myself through writing before I found myself through speaking. And someone was talking earlier about the power of reading your name in print, and that's something that definitely changed my life. And I feel so lucky, and it's so rare that I had this opportunity in high school, because I go into college and I know what I want to put my focus into, and I can't imagine it any other way. Also another name in print. The lens that you gave me was something that I carry with me also outside of everything with writing. It's how I see people, it's how I go through any environment, because I am aware that everyone has a story. And that's something that I didn't put much thought into before. One of my favorite stories that I wrote for you was on Maya Nallowade, who is my valedictorian actually. And it was a story about her publishing a book as a senior in high school, which was crazy. And she started crying when it was published and told me that how much it meant to her, because her parents were very, her parents really wanted her to pursue STEM in every which way. They thought that that meant that she could be successful, and she kept her whole passion for writing a secret, and publishing this book was something that was super hard for her to do without telling her parents, and she didn't want to tell them until it was published. So that article not only gave her the power in seeing her name in print there, but her family gave her so much respect and saw her passions as something that was important, and you changed her life by letting that be published. She's now trying to major in English right now at Penn, when she was at first only applying to engineering schools, and that was not what she wanted to do. So that was something that I saw writing, like it changed people's lives. There was one night, one of the first stories that you had me write was about Terry Wood's legislative session Q&A you were having at a Wayton Market. It was on Saturday. I thought it was Sunday. So I broke my curfew that Saturday night. It was kind of an ugly morning in my house. My dad drove 4 of my friends to Barry's boot camp, and I sat in the car and I didn't go, and maybe drop me off at Wayton Market after. And when the clerk told me that was yesterday, my heart sank, because it's like, well, this is a really important article, and this is like my first opportunity for the Darien Times. I have no idea who Terry Wood is, but she's really important. This is bad. And I found your email, and I met you at Darien Library. I actually never even told you that I missed you. That was a secret, so I'm surprised I didn't go. But I've made so many connections, and from everything that you've had me do, I've met so many people on assignment. I've also just wanted to meet so many people, because the perspective that I have now is that there's a story in every corner, and you really brought that to life in Darien. You didn't focus on the headlines that, I don't know, in high school a lot of the headlines are going to be the sports games and things like that. You focused on that. You also gave the people who didn't have those opportunities, the places that they wanted, and seeing their names in print changed their lives.
Thank you.
I think we're really are. So I think that's it. If anyone else, if you haven't had a chance to sign the card, please go ahead and do so. And I think I'm welling up, so I'm sorry. I'm not not together to say anything. But we all love Susan. We love you so much. You've done an incredible job for journalistically and for our community. So thank you again.
Thank you
Means a
so
lot.
much, everybody.